Hi there, and welcome to the Sunny Daze podcast at jollyville.com. That's JALEAVILLE.com. And I'm your host, Jolly. And today we've got a couple of uplifting stories for you, some did you know, and more. So grab a cup of sunshine and let's get started. We have a full About April special. But first up today, and a real fur baby story it is. The headlines read, "A delivery driver takes lunch to animal shelter, ends up adopting dog." On the spot, Grubhub driver Alan Mankeo decided that the dog was meant to be his. And so they say, here's the rest of the story. Food delivery driver Alan Mankeo had his daughter along with him when he dropped off a lunch order at the Fairfax County Animal Shelter in Virginia. Alan, a single father, took 5-year-old Sabrina along for his Grubhub drop-off, thinking he'd spend just a few seconds making the delivery. But as Alan approached the shelter on February the 10th, he spotted a sweet-looking pooch staring at him through that front window. The dog reminded him of his late dog, Rusty, who had run away nearly 30 years ago. "They're identical," said Alan. Rusty was exactly the same stature and build. Although his daughter had been begging him to get a dog, Alan said being a single parent with inflation being so high, it's just not in my budget to pay for a dog right now. But the pup in the window just kept drawing him in. After the delivery, Alan asked the staff if he and his daughter could just meet the dog. He was excited to learn that there was a promotion going on. It was Super Bowl weekend, and the shelter was holding an adoption bowl event, waiving all adoption fees for dogs that were 45 pounds or bigger. The goal was to get as many dogs as possible into loving homes, said Rebecca, the communications manager for the animal shelter. The shelter staff introduced Alan and Sabrina to Jehu, a 6-year-old, 65-pound pit bull mix. "Right away, he played with my daughter. He was very sensitive, and he was so gentle," said Alan, noting that Jehu seemed obedient and well-trained. "This dog is unbelievable." He adored Jehu's brown and white coat, his large eyes, and freckles on his snoot. "He's beautiful," said Alan, who's a Navy veteran who's working as a food delivery driver, he said, while he's in between jobs. And Alan was also touched by the dog's behavior. His guardians could no longer care for him, Rebecca had told him, explaining that although they weren't able to keep the dog, they had loved him very much. What a great story. Have a wonderful time, you guys, with your beautiful fur baby. And now, a jolly chat poem for April. Let's call it April's Splendor. In the tapestry of seasons, April emerges as a radiant jewel, casting its spell with a symphony of delights that captivate the senses and rejuvenate the soul. As winter's icy grip relinquishes its hold, April ushers in a breathtaking transformation. It begins with a gentle awakening, a whisper of warmth in the air, a tentative unfurling of delicate blossoms. Each day, the sun climbs higher, infusing the world with a golden glow, while the earth bursts forth in a riot of colors. April is a celebration of rebirth and renewal. It's a time when energy emerges, nature emerges from its slumber, painting the landscape with vibrant hues of pink, purple, and green. Cherry blossoms adorn tree branches like frothy clouds, while tulips sway gracefully in the breeze, their petals unfurling in a kaleidoscope of colors. But April's allure extends beyond the visual feast it offers. It's a month filled with the sweet symphony of birdsong, as feathered carolers herald the arrival of spring. The air is alive with the hum of bees and the fragrance of freshly blooming flowers, weaving a tapestry of scents that intoxicate the senses. April is a time for outdoor adventures and simple pleasures. It's a month for leisurely walks in the park, where the earth is soft beneath your feet and the sun kisses your skin with its gentle warmth. It's a time for picnics under the bluest skies where laughter mingles with the scent of freshly cut grass and the taste of ripe strawberries. In April, the world feels alive with possibility. It's a time to shed the heavy coats of winter and embrace the lightness of being. So let us revel in April's splendor, dear friends, and bask in the magic of this exquisite month that reminds us of the beauty of life's eternal renewal. And now, some more did you know about it? Did you know that April is the best year to look up in the skies and watch meteor showers? Well, April is a great month for meteor showers, one of which is the Lyrids meteor shower, which appears from April the 16th to April the 26th each year. April is known for its beautiful spring weather, the start of warmer weather, the right time of the year when the Easter Bunny will or just has made an appearance. And a few more fun facts about this beautiful month. Well, we know that it's the fourth month of the year, but that's only by the Gregorian calendar that we adhere to now. It was previously the fifth month in the earlier Julian calendar. And did you know in the southern hemisphere, April is the seasonal equivalent of October? And no one is sure how the month ended up with its name, but we know the Romans named it Aprilis. Those who were born in April have a diamond as their birthstone, which represents innocence. Their birth flower is either a daisy or a sweet pea. And there are two zodiac signs in April: Aries, which is until April the 19th, and Taurus, which is April 20th and onwards. And here's a few historic facts of things, events that have happened in April in the past. 1970, April the 11th, the famous Apollo 13 was launched and ran into difficulties about 2 days later. George Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States, April the 30th, 1789. Also in April on the 14th, 1912, the famous Titanic ship hit an iceberg and sank on her first and only voyage. And did you know back in the time of ancient Roman, April was sacred to the goddess Venus? And there are quite a few notable historical people born in April, such as Leonardo da Vinci, Shakespeare, and Queen Elizabeth. And there is one most very well-known day of the month, April Fool's Day, the first day of the month. And now, some news in the sky continues. On April the 8th, tomorrow, a total solar eclipse will cross North America, passing over Mexico, the United States, and Canada. A total solar eclipse happens when the moon passes between the sun and the earth, completely blocking the face of the sun. The sun will darken as if it were dawn or dusk. And here's some fun facts about eclipses. Total solar eclipses cannot be seen from the north and the south poles. Also, almost identical solar eclipses happen every 18 years in 11 months. And depending on the geometry of the sun, the moon, and the earth, there can be between 2 and 5 solar eclipses a year. A total solar eclipse can happen only once every 1 to 2 years. This is what makes them such very rare events. And the width of the path of the totality is usually about 160 kilometers and can sweep across an area of the Earth's surface about 10,000 miles long. Wow. Also, if any planets are in the sky at the time of the total solar eclipse, they can be seen as points of light. And lastly, a solar eclipse happens at new moon. A new moon occurs when the moon is between the sun and earth. The only lunar phase when that happens is new moon. fascinating stuff. Hey, fascinating stuff. And now in the entertainment world, how about we indulge in some classic albums that turn, say, 50 in 2024? When the Beatles sang, it was only 20 it was 20 years ago today at the beginning of Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It set a standard for celebrating rock and roll anniversaries. After all, few expected the music to last 20 minutes, let alone decades, and how very wrong they were to assume that. Now we celebrate as a course 25th, 30th, and even 60th anniversaries for key albums. 50, however, is a real mark. The point at which the point at which an album is deemed, well, golden. A half century of continuing impact is sustainable. It's substantial. And once there, we can be assured that the work will live on in fame, and some may even say infamy, and hold a beloved spot in fans' heart. With that in mind, here's a few albums that turned 50 this year. Joni Mitchell, Court and Spark was Miss Mitchell's sixth studio album, was her most commercially successful to date, her only number one on the Billboard 200. It featured her only top 10 hit, Help Me, as well as Free Man in Paris and Down to You, which won a Grammy Award for the best arrangement accompanying vocal. Also released 50 years ago, Jolene by Dolly Parton. It was Miss Parton's 13th studio album. Not only has the title track arguably her signature song, but also her version of the I Will Always Love You that Whitney Houston made stratospheric 18 years later. Miss Parton wrote both songs the same day, too. The rest of the set reflects the burst of creativity, making it a go-to for her solo albums. And Kiss, February 50 years ago. Those four painted faces staring off the cover certainly got our attention, though not always the favorable kind. Kiss was still finding its sound on this debut, but the number of songs that would become enduring favorites in its catalog, Strutter, Deuce, Cold Gin Firehouse, Black Diamond, 1,000 Years, Nothing to Lose, it all indicated that something was going on beyond all that makeup. And Barry White, Can't Get Enough. This was his third consecutive album 50 years ago, number one rhythm and blues album for that rumble voiced romantic, but the first to do that on the Billboard 200 made him a superstar. Two singles, Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe, and You Are the First, the Last, My Everything, also topped the Billboard 100, and I Can't Believe You Love offered 10 and a half minutes of below the pillow talk, if you know what I mean. Also, 50 years ago, John Lennon, Walls and Bridges. After a couple of relatively disappointments, sometime in New York City and Mind Games, name a couple, Lennon bounced back with this number one album recorded during his year and a half separation from Yoko Ono. Son Julian Lennon, then 11, played the drums on the remake of Lee Dorsey's Yaya, and Elton John guested on Whatever Gets You Through the Night, which was Lennon's first solo number one hit in the US. As John told him, it would be during that very session. You know he knew. You know he knew. And the big screen in 1974. Yes, 1974. So some films that are turning 50. Well, in the 1970s, it's a great decade for film. Some consider it is the best decade for American movies. That makes golden anniversaries quite nice for film fans these days, as films from 1974 are celebrating their 50th anniversary. Here's just a few of them. Do you remember Blazing Saddles? Mel Brooks was the king of spoof in the 70s. The riff on the Western was co-written by Richard Pryor, although Cleavon Little ended up starring alongside Gene Wilder. Blazing Saddles is often discussed as kind of a film that couldn't be made today, an area of conversation we have no interest in indulging. It's just a silly take no prisoners that made, and many can still consider, was just made one of the all-time great. And The Longest Yard, remember that one with Burt Reynolds? The Longest Yard, the foremost sports movie of 1974. He plays Paul Crewe, a former professional quarterback who whips a team of fellow convicts into shape to play a game against the prison guards. Of course, the guards have no interest in losing, no matter what it takes. The Longest Yard was then later remade with starring Adam Sandler. And The Taking of Pelham 123, one of the top crime thrillers of the 1970s. It is one of those clockwork stories that keep humming and rarely missteps. It's the kind of 70 films where Walter Matthau is the lead and also the hero. He's just a guy who works for the New York Transit Police, and then he finds himself dealing with robbers who have taken a train car and all of its passengers hostages. Wonderful movie, wonderful movie. Also, do you remember The Towering Inferno? Ah, the all-star disaster film. They don't make movies like this anymore, to use a well-worn phrase. Steve McQueen and Paul Newman shared the lead in this film about a skyscraper that burst into flames, trapping many people inside. The disaster film is about action, melodrama, and the triumph of the human spirit. The Towering Inferno is perhaps the finest version of that. Ah, the 70s. Well, as we come to a close of today's episode, let's remember the stories we've gotten to share. They can serve as a reminder of goodness and beauty that surrounds us every day. And beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So find your beauty, shine, share it. Remember to spread love, joy, and positivity whenever and wherever you go. So we'll see you next week for some more stories, entertainment news, fun facts. And until then, peace and love always. And thank you for tuning into the Sunny Days podcast at jollyville.com. That's JALEAVILLE.com. Thank you.